Night fell over Rome like a forbidden secret. The lights flickered on the wet streets, and every shadow seemed to whisper promises the world wasn't meant to hear. It was there, between silence and chance, that a small mistake changed everything. A message sent to the wrong number, and an apology thrown into the wind. He didn't know it yet, but destiny was already watching him, patiently setting up a meeting that should never have happened. The night hung over the city like a soaked coat. Ethan Ross stared at his reflection in the window. The apartment smelled of cold coffee and broken promises. The distant lights of Rome blinked like memories refusing to fade away. He couldn't tell if it was longing or self-punishment, but his hands trembled over the phone. A short message, almost an apology, was written without thinking and sent without checking the number. The sound of the message being sent echoed inside him. Those words drifted through the night like a secret carried by the wind. Ethan didn't double-check the number. He didn't want to look back. He just hoped someone, somewhere, would hear him. The silence that followed was too heavy. Until the phone buzzed, and a dry, cryptic reply appeared on the screen. "You shouldn't have sent me that." He frowned. The number was unknown. For a moment, he thought it might be his ex with a new phone. But something in the tone felt different. There was authority, distance, coldness. "Sorry, wrong number," he typed, but erased it before sending. Regret came quickly, followed by curiosity. Who would talk to a stranger like that? Another buzz. Another message. "Why do you still love someone who destroyed you?" Ethan read it slowly, as if the words might burn if read too fast. His heart pounded. The woman on the other side seemed to know too much. He tried to laugh it off, typed something light-hearted, then deleted it again. Before he could react, another message arrived. "Have you always been this naive?" The air grew thick. Ethan looked out the window, trying to understand how someone could reach through a screen and touch him so deeply. "Who are you?" he asked. The answer came fast. Valentina. The name sounded elegant, dangerous. It lingered in his mind like a forgotten perfume. He wanted to stop, but his body didn't listen. "Do you know me?" he typed. The reply froze him. "Enough. The cafe you go to. The neighborhood where you live. I watch." Ethan's heart raced. That old feeling of being watched returned. It wasn't just curiosity, it was control. Yet within the fear there was fascination. Within the danger, a strange kind of attraction. The conversation stretched on for minutes that felt like hours. Valentina spoke calmly, choosing every word as if she wanted to leave scars. "Do you still believe in love?" she asked. He hesitated, then answered, "I do, even when there's no reason to." On the other end, silence. Then a line that sounded like a sigh filled with disdain. "Then you're still a dangerous man." He laughed awkwardly, but something inside him shifted. That woman could disarm him with the same precision she used to wound him. There was something hypnotic in every line she wrote. "The danger lies in those who feel, not in those who speak," came her next message. Ethan pressed his forehead against the cold glass and closed his eyes, trying to understand what drew him to that strange connection. The clock showed 2 a.m. when the rain began to fall. Drops hit the windowsill as if trying to remind him that time was still moving. He thought about love and redemption, but the word redemption felt too far away. "Do you really want to heal, or just company for your pain?" Valentina wrote. He read it and didn't know how to answer. "Why do you care?" he asked, searching for a trace of humanity. "I don't care. I observe." The coldness of her words cut through the air. Ethan realized he was dealing with someone used to seeing the world without ever touching it. Someone who didn't flinch. And, paradoxically, that was exactly what drew him in even more. The night dragged on. He no longer knew if he was being manipulated or understood. Every phrase she sent seemed to come from a place where love and danger walked hand in hand. "If you had the chance to start over, would you?" she asked. He took a deep breath, stared into the emptiness, and answered, "I don't know. The unknown scares less than the familiar that hurts." Ethan gave a faint smile. It was the truth he never had the courage to admit to himself. The rain now fell softly, and the city seemed to listen to that silent conversation between two strangers who should have never met. Finally, the phone buzzed again. Kafla Luna. Tomorrow. Come if you want answers. The message was both an invitation and a trap. Ethan reread it, as if the letters could reveal hidden intentions. La Luna. The name sounded like something out of an old dream, or a refined nightmare. He stood still for long seconds, feeling his heart grow heavy while his mind tried to resist. I'm not confirming anything, he typed, trying to sound firm. The reply came quickly. You don't have to. And then the silence returned, thick, absolute, like the beginning of something with no way back. Ethan stayed there, staring at the reflection of an ordinary man about to cross an invisible line. The night ended, but something inside him didn't. Outside, Rome was waking up, unaware that a dangerous love story and a twist of fate had already begun. And without realizing it, Ethan had just taken his first step into it. Morning came grey, and Ethan couldn't sleep. His phone lay on the table, still, like a mirror reflecting everything he was trying to avoid. He tried to work, edit photos, make coffee, but the name Valentina kept pulsing between the images like an invisible signature. He couldn't stop wondering who she really was, a woman who spoke as if she'd known him forever, who undressed him without ever touching him. In the afternoon, a new notification appeared. Did you sleep? Simple, direct, no small talk. He took a deep breath and replied with irony, hard to sleep when someone's invading my thoughts. The phone buzzed again. I didn't invade anything. You opened the door. Ethan smiled, but the smile didn't last. There was a cold truth in her words. He really had. The days that followed turned into a quiet game. She sent short messages, sometimes teasing, sometimes philosophical. He replied hesitantly, like someone walking barefoot on glass. Valentina seemed to understand every pause, every doubt, using them as if she could read between his heartbeats. Are you always this easy to read? She asked. Ethan replied, Depends on who's reading. She laughed, or at least he imagined she did, because her answer came with a single word, interesting. It didn't sound like approval, but a challenge. There was power in every word she sent, a kind of power that didn't ask for space. It simply took it. Ethan could feel it in his skin, like an electric current that frightened him one moment and fascinated him the next. That night, she sent a photo. Nothing explicit, just the reflection of a wineglass on marble, a distorted silhouette shaped by the light. I'm thinking about you, she wrote. He stared at the image for long minutes, trying to see what lay beyond what was visible. Why? He asked, and her reply came quickly. Because I still haven't decided what to do with you. The phrase sounded like both a confession and a threat. Ethan let out a nervous laugh, feeling his stomach tighten. You talk like a movie villain, and you talk like a man who doesn't realize what he's gotten himself into. He leaned against the wall, looking up at the ceiling, trying to make sense of something that wasn't meant to be rational. Valentina wrapped him up with precision, and he let her. Do you always live like this, testing people? He asked. She replied, Testing is surviving, then added, Once you understand that, you start seeing the world differently. Ethan didn't know if it was cheap philosophy or a confession, but something about that line stayed with him, as if she knew what it meant to live in fear and keep going anyway. In the days that followed, strange things started happening. A black car parked on his street, a familiar silhouette in a cafe across town. He told himself it was coincidence, but his instincts screamed otherwise. Valentina wasn't an ordinary woman. She knew details he'd never mentioned, names, places, even times. When he asked how she knew so much, she simply said, Truth comes before trust. There was something cold and calculated about her, yet underneath it, a hidden sadness, almost poetic. Ethan began to feel both pity and fascination. You sound like someone who's loved and lost, he wrote late one night. The reply took longer than usual. To love and to lose are the same verb, only the tense changes. The silence that followed felt heavier than any answer. He realized he was speaking to someone who had been through hell and made it back. "Are you dangerous?" he asked, maybe hoping for a no. "Depends on who's asking." She never lied, she simply left the truth standing there, waiting for him to decide whether he wanted to face it. Ethan started looking at his phone differently. It wasn't curiosity anymore, it was addiction. With every message, he felt closer to an abyss that carried her scent. And the strangest thing was, he wanted to fall. Valentina turned fear into attraction, discomfort into desire. "Why me?" he asked one night. "Because you still feel—" "And those who feel are useful." That word cut through him. Useful. He didn't know if she was using him, studying him, or simply amused by the chaos. But something inside whispered that it was bigger than that, a kind of destiny disguised as coincidence. "Do you believe in chance?" he typed. "No, I believe in well-planned mistakes." That's when he understood the wrong number hadn't been a mistake. Or maybe it had, but one destiny had been waiting years to make. And in that instant, Ethan realized the game had just begun. Morning came slow, dragging the hours as if time itself was afraid of what was coming. Ethan tried to act as though nothing had changed, but every simple act, the coffee, the shower, the reflection in the mirror, felt like a failed rehearsal of normal life. The phone lay on the table, that last message still glowing softly, like an invitation that burned in silence. "Kafla Luna, tomorrow. Come if you want answers." He thought about ignoring it, deleting everything, changing his number, running from something he couldn't even name. But curiosity tasted like old wine. The more he tried to resist it, the stronger it became. As night fell, he put on a dark shirt and a simple coat. Every fold of the fabric felt like a disguise. The mirror gave him back a tired face, but with a look he hadn't seen in years, the look of someone ready to find out, no matter the cost. The city breathed a golden haze when he stepped outside. The lampposts poured amber light onto the damp streets, and the faint sound of a violin drifted from some forgotten bar. Ethan walked slowly, but his heart raced with every corner he turned. Rome seemed to be watching him, and maybe, somehow, it really was. Kafla Luna was exactly as she had described it, luxurious, quiet, a temple of secrets. Marble tables, velvet curtains, low voices that sounded like conversations between ghosts. When Ethan pushed open the door, the bell rang like an omen. The waiter looked him over from head to toe, studying every detail, then gave a small nod toward the back. She was there, Valentina Moretti. Sitting alone, dressed in black, her hair pulled back, her gaze needing no words. The world seemed to fall silent around her. She held a glass of wine, the light reflecting on the surface as if time itself bowed before her. Ethan froze, unable to take a step. It wasn't fear, it was something worse. Fascination. Valentina lifted her eyes and saw him. A brief smile, restrained, almost cruel. She tilted her head slightly, calling him without a word. He approached, his legs heavy, his soul too light. When he sat across from her, the waiter appeared, silent as though he'd been expecting that moment for centuries. "You came," she said flatly, like commenting on the weather. Ethan tried to smile, but his voice failed. "I don't know why." Valentina raised an eyebrow, studying him with cold curiosity. "Most people don't know why they walk into the fire, until they feel the heat." He said nothing. Her gaze was enough. The silence between them was almost physical, an invisible field where danger and desire blended without asking permission. Her perfume was subtle but inescapable. Her hands, firm, elegant, accustomed to control, rested on the table with the calm authority of someone who decides other people's timing. "So it's you," he said, trying to break the tension. "The woman from the wrong messages." She laughed, a short, low laugh, as if she'd been expecting that line. There's no such thing as a wrong message, Ethan. Only recipients who take too long to understand what they're receiving. He looked away, feeling that every word she spoke carried the weight of something larger. The waiter brought coffee. Valentina watched the steam rise and fade into the air. "You know why I like this place?" she asked. He shook his head. "Because no one pretends here. Everyone came to hide something, and that makes them honest." A chill ran down Ethan's spine. She spoke like someone who could turn pain into art. "And you? What did you come to hide?" she asked, her eyes never leaving his. Ethan took a deep breath. "Maybe. I came to say goodbye to the pain." Valentina touched her glass to her lips but didn't drink. Pain doesn't accept goodbyes. It comes back when it misses you. Silence returned, and time seemed to stop. The people around them faded away. Only they remained, two souls caught in a game no one dared to name. Valentina leaned in slightly, her eyes glowing under the warm light. "You don't look like the kind of man who dials wrong numbers." Ethan gave a nervous laugh. "And you don't look like the kind of woman who replies to strangers. Maybe we're not any kind of anything," she said, her gaze a mix of melancholy and power. His heart stumbled, and for the first time he realized it wasn't just fear, it was fate. There was something in her eyes that told stories he didn't yet know, but somehow already felt inside him. The coffee went cold, time dissolved, and the air between them grew too heavy to breathe. "What do you want from me, Valentina?" he asked. She studied him for a few long seconds, as if weighing the price of the truth. "I want to see how far you'll go before you break." Ethan swallowed hard but didn't look away. "And if I don't? Then you'll force me to change the ending." She smiled, but it never reached her eyes. It was a challenge, a promise, maybe even a warning. He felt the ground slip beneath him and realized that this meeting wouldn't end there. Nothing in his life would ever be simple again. Valentina placed money on the table and stood. The way she moved carried the grace of something divine, or dangerous. Before leaving, she placed a hand on his shoulder, light, steady, inevitable. "See you soon, Ethan Ross." And then she was gone, leaving her scent and chaos lingering in the same space. He stayed frozen, unsure whether to breathe or run after her. Outside, the rain began again, washing over the streets as if trying to erase footprints. Ethan looked at his empty cup and understood what had begun. It wasn't a game. It was a sentence, and he was already serving it. The night crept in without asking permission. Ethan walked back from the cafe with the strange feeling that he'd stepped through a mirror. The city looked different now, quieter, as if it was breathing the same secret he carried. Her name wouldn't leave his mind. Valentina Moretti. The sound of it had the weight of a legend. He could almost feel her scent still hanging in the era mix of wine, night, and power. When he got home, he dropped his coat on the couch. He tried to take a few photos, anything, but everything seemed out of focus. His hands trembled, and he couldn't tell if it was fear or fascination. He opened his laptop and searched her name. What he found made him stop breathing. Old headlines, discreet and written in different languages. Lorenzo Moretti, head of the Moretti family, killed in ambush. Beneath it, a photo of her younger, colder, with the same gaze that had pierced through him at La Luna. His heart pounded so hard it hurt. He read the article again. Valentina Moretti takes control of the European crime empire. After her husband's death, Ethan leaned back in his chair, trying to make sense of the impossible. The woman he'd been talking to, the woman who seemed to understand his pain, was the head of the Italian mafia. The wrong number had become something much, much bigger. He closed the laptop and sat in the dark, his mind spinning. His reason tried to deny it, but his body already knew. There was nothing innocent about Valentina, the calm way she watched the world, the precision of her words, the way she ruled silence itself. Nothing about her was accidental. And still, he couldn't stay away. The phone buzzed. "You found out." Ethan froze. He looked around the room, as if she could somehow be there. "Are you watching me?" he typed, his fingers stiff against the screen. Her reply came seconds later. "I only see what I choose to see." He tossed the phone onto the table and began pacing. She was testing him, and worse, he was letting her. The sound of rain returned, steady and haunting, like the soundtrack of an old film. Ethan opened the window and saw a black car parked at the corner. No lights. Engine off. But the feeling of being watched was too real to dismiss as coincidence. Her voice echoed in his mind. I observe. He shut the window and turned off the lights, trying to disappear inside his own apartment. But fear had the flavor of curiosity. And when curiosity wins over fear, fate has already chosen its path. He picked up the phone again and typed, "Why didn't you tell me who you were?" The reply took longer than usual, but it came, because a name doesn't change what I am. Ethan sat down, exhausted, trying to figure out whether she was talking about power or pain. "Do you have any idea what you've done to me?" he wrote. Her answer came like a blade wrapped in silk. "You sent your pain to the wrong number." But pain is the only language I speak fluently. Those words stayed trapped inside him. There was something deeply human behind her coldness, as if power was just her way of hiding everything she'd already lost. Ethan started digging through more articles. Photos of her in meetings, headlines about shady deals, whispers of political alliances. In every image, the same gaze, calm, lethal, unsettlingly beautiful. And amid the reports, one line stood out. The Iron Widow who turned grief into an empire. He closed the screen. This wasn't just a story. It was an open wound wearing expensive perfume. In the silence, he remembered the way she had looked at him in the cafe. For a moment, he thought he'd seen something else, something that didn't belong to power, but to loss. As if a ghost stood beside her. "Did you love that man?" he typed without thinking. Valentina replied minutes later, "I loved who he was before he died." His chest tightened. That answer said more than any confession could. It was pain disguised as coldness. Guilt masked as control. And he understood. No one rises to the top without bleeding inside. Was he betrayed? He asked. The blue check mark appeared, but her reply took a while. When it came, it was only one line. Every empire falls from within. Ethan stared at the screen, feeling that every word she sent pulled him one step closer to an abyss already carved with his name. "Why did you choose me?" he asked. "Because you have the same eyes he did." The words hit like a punch. The same eyes. The same soul she had once loved and lost. The air grew heavier. Suddenly, everything made sense. Her interest, her tone, the silence that carried more emotion than any scream. Valentina wasn't just playing. She was reliving. And without realizing it, he had become the reflection of the man she was trying to forget. "Do you miss him?" he asked. "I miss who I was when he loved me." Ethan leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe. That woman, the one feared by so many, hid a heart buried beneath concrete and guilt. And somehow, he wanted to dig it out. The night stretched on, and the rain outside sounded like an ancient lament. He typed, hesitating, "Can I see you again?" The silence lasted for long minutes. Then the phone vibrated with just one word, "Maybe." Ethan smiled without realizing it. Deep down, he already knew he would. Somewhere else in Rome, Valentina closed a window and turned off the lights. On the table, a golden ring engraved with a rose wrapped in thorns caught the moonlight. She ran her finger over the metal and whispered into the dark, "Some mistakes are worth making twice." Ethan didn't hear her, but something inside him quietly answered. The next night came sooner than the clock allowed. Ethan didn't know exactly what he was waiting for, only that he was. Her name sat in his chest like a secret that refused to be forgotten. Every sound from the street felt like a sign. Every shadow, a memory that hadn't yet happened. He looked at his phone dozens of times, unable to type a single word. And as always, it was her who broke the silence first. "Are you still there?" The message appeared without a greeting, as if she somehow knew the exact moment when the emptiness began to hurt. Ethan replied without thinking, "I am, but I don't know why." The blue checkmark appeared, and for a moment he thought she would ignore him. Then came the reply, "Because you remind me of someone." The words hovered on the screen for what felt like an eternity. He read them again and again, feeling his stomach drop. "Someone who died?" he asked carefully. The pause before her answer was long enough for his heart to lose its rhythm. "Someone who taught me the price of feeling." Ethan set the phone down on the table and took a deep breath. He could feel something far bigger wrapping around him, something caught between love and tragedy. It was as if fate were playing with him, redrawing paths that were never meant to cross. The night stretched endlessly. He thought about walking away, deleting everything, but her words clung to him like perfume in the air. Hours later, another message appeared. "If I wanted to erase you, I would have already." Ethan read it slowly, feeling himself being pulled toward a place he knew he couldn't return from. "But you remind me what it's like to be human." That confession hit him like silent lightning. For the first time, Valentina revealed a crack in her armor. There was pain behind her control, guilt behind her coldness. Ethan saw it and replied only, "Maybe that's why I came. To remind you." On the other side, no sound. Only the quiet that comes before something important. 2 days later, she asked to see him again. Not like before, not with velvet curtains or the scent of wine glasses. This time, it was an old park at dusk. A forgotten corner of the world. Ethan arrived early, watching the bare trees and the wind scattering fragments of leaves across the path. When she appeared, time seemed to fold back on itself. Valentina wore black again, but without the shine of luxury. Simple, almost vulnerable. Yet her eyes were the same, intense, steady, belonging to someone who had learned to master even her own fear. "You came," she said, her tone neutral. "You asked," he replied. She looked away, as if avoiding her own reflection in him. "Why me?" he asked, voice low, almost a whisper. Valentina drew a deep breath before answering. "Because you have his eyes." The silence that followed was too heavy to fit between two people. "Your husband?" he asked gently. She nodded without looking at him. "Lorenzo." The name hung in the air, heavy as the toll of a bell. "He was a photographer too," she continued. "He saw the world with tenderness. And that's what got him killed." Ethan felt the ground slip for a moment. "What happened?" Valentina stared into the distance, her face carved in marble. An ambush, a traitor inside the family. "I was only a few meters away when I heard the shots." The wind rose, carrying her words away, as if trying to spare her from saying them. Her voice grew softer. "I spent 5 years trying to erase every trace of him. But when I read your first message, the way you wrote, the hesitation, it was like hearing his voice again." Ethan lowered his gaze, feeling the weight of guilt that wasn't his. "I'm not him," he said quietly. "I know," she replied. "But my heart hasn't learned that yet." There was a moment of silence, only the distant sound of a church bell breaking through the air. "Do you still love him?" Ethan asked. Valentina took her time before answering. "I love what's left of him in me. The rest." The rest turned to steel. The words landed like a muffled shot. He understood. She wasn't cold by choice. She was cold to survive. Ethan took a step closer, but she stepped back. Subtle, yet firm. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Try to fix me." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried sadness. "Maybe I'm not trying to fix you. I just want to understand." She looked at him for a long time, and in that instant, something shifted. Her gaze, once impenetrable, softened, just slightly. "Understanding hurts more than loving," she whispered. The sun disappeared behind the trees, painting the sky in shades of grey and gold. Valentina took off her ring, the one engraved with the rose and thorns, and held it for a few seconds. "Everything I built came from fear," she confessed. "The fear of feeling again." Ethan watched her in silence, afraid that words might break the moment. "But you ruined my logic." Her words lingered in the air. He wanted to say something but didn't. Sometimes silence is the only answer that keeps a moment from breaking. Valentina slipped the ring back onto her finger and gave a faint smile. You should have sent that message to anyone else, Ethan Ross. But I didn't. She sighed, surrendering to a truth she didn't want to accept. For a brief moment she seemed different, not the mafia boss. Not the feared woman, but someone who carried too many ghosts inside her chest. If I believed in fate, I'd say ours is a well-calculated mistake, she murmured. Some mistakes are worth the price, he answered. Her eyes softened. For that fleeting instant, power gave way to pain. When the silence grew unbearable, Valentina stepped closer. She stopped just inches from him. Don't get used to this, she said, locking eyes with him. Used to what? My weakness. And before he could reply, she turned and walked away, leaving the wind to finish what words could not. Ethan stood there, watching her figure fade among the trees. Something inside him had shifted. The wrong number was no longer an accident. It was a line written between two lives that had crossed at the wrong time, or perhaps at exactly the right one. And though he couldn't explain why, he knew that mistake was the beginning of everything. The night came dragging a quietness that felt rehearsed. Ethan hadn't slept properly in days. His conversations with Valentina had turned into mazes of insomnia, every word of hers echoing between fear and desire. The apartment was drowned in shadows, the air thick and heavy. Then the phone rang. A call, not a message. He answered without thinking. You lied to me. Her voice came sharp, metallic, without a trace of hesitation. Ethan sat up, his heart pounding. Valentina? Silence. Then her breathing, slow, deliberate. You thought I wouldn't find out. Find out what? He waited, but the answer hit like a blade. That you photographed my man. He stayed silent, trying to make sense of what she meant, but his mind was spinning. Your man? Lorenzo. The name dropped like a stone. Ethan's memory flashed. An old project, a photo exhibit about Rome's powerful figures, a black and white series. Among the portraits was a man smiling beside a woman in a black dress. He'd never known who they were, until now. That was years ago. Before everything what? Her question sliced through him. He swallowed hard. Before you, Valentina didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice no longer sounded like a woman's. It sounded like a verdict. Get dressed. I'm sending someone for you. What do you mean, sending someone? Ethan stood, pacing the room like a prisoner searching for an open window. Don't argue with me. The line went dead. Silence took over, but only for a few seconds. Then came the low roar of blades cutting the air. The floor began to tremble. Ethan ran to the window and saw it. A helicopter landing in the middle of the empty street, white lights tearing through the night. Men in suits stepped out, moving in perfect sync like trained shadows. One of them looked straight up, directly at his window. Ethan stepped back, his heart racing. The building's front door opened, and the echo of heavy boots filled the hallway. 3 sharp knocks. Mr. Ross, Miss Moretti sent us to pick you up. His mind screamed run, but his body didn't listen. Ethan grabbed his coat, his phone, and opened the door. The man in front was young, but his eyes were ancient, the kind that had seen too much. No tricks, Mr. Ross. The lady doesn't like to wait. Ethan followed. The staircase felt endless, the air thick with the scent of iron and rain. Outside, the wind cut against his face. He climbed into the helicopter without a word. The noise of the blades drowned out his thoughts. The city shrank beneath him, rooftops fading into the clouds. He stared out the window, wondering what awaited him. Part of him wanted to jump. Part of him needed to see how far this would go. Valentina appeared in the seat across from him, elegant, flawless, as if the night itself were her private stage. She wore black again, hair tied back, eyes sharp as glass. You disappointed me, she said, crossing her legs. I didn't even know who he was, Ethan answered. Ignorance doesn't make you innocent. He drew a shaky breath. Are you threatening me? I'm teaching you. She held his gaze for a long time as the helicopter tilted over the sea. When someone steps into my world, they learn the rules. The first, never hide the past. The second. She leaned forward slightly. Never lied to me. Ethan didn't speak. He just watched her and saw the fear buried beneath her authority. Why me? He finally asked. Because you remind me of what I lost. And that's dangerous. Her voice faltered. Barely. But enough. For the first time, her power trembled. The helicopter touched down on a terrace lined with statues and gardens glowing under soft lights. Valentina stepped out first, her heels clicking against the wet stone. Ethan followed, dazed, defenseless, as if he'd walked into another era. The mansion before them looked like an ancient fortress, its windows holding more secrets than light. She walked toward the door, and before stepping inside, she turned to him. Don't be mistaken, Ethan. What brought you here wasn't an accident. It was destiny trying to fix mine. A chill ran down his spine. And what happens now? Valentina gave a faint smile, the kind that comes before a war. Now you learn the price of having his eyes. The door opened with a deep, echoing creak, and the sound of the helicopter fading away carried with it his last chance to run. Ethan stepped inside. The air was thick with her perfume, blended with the scent of old wood and something else. Danger, maybe? She walked ahead, and he followed, like a prisoner intrigued by his own cell. At the end of the hallway, Valentina stopped before a painting, an old portrait of Lorenzo, her dead husband. He believed love could save everything, she said without turning around, and I believed him. Until the day love got him killed. Ethan felt his chest tighten. Do you think I'm him? No, she replied, turning slowly. But fate likes to repeat faces when it wants to finish what it left undone. Silence hung between them. Outside, distant thunder rolled across the sky. Ethan realized nothing about this was coincidence, not the wrong number, not the cafe, not even the fear that kept pulling him back. And when Valentina took a step closer, her eyes weren't just cold anymore. They were human, painfully human. You weren't supposed to find me, she whispered, but now that you have, don't you dare leave me. The world tilted around him. What had started as a mistake had turned into a promise. And in that mansion, where love and danger slept side by side, he understood. There was no way back. The mansion on the Roman hills seemed to breathe on its own. Every corridor carried the heavy silence of too many secrets. Ethan walked without knowing whether he was a guest, a prisoner, or something in between. The guards had disappeared the moment they entered. Only his footsteps remained, and Valentina's scent leading the way. The air smelled of fine wine, old wood, and danger. She waited for him in the grand hall, where a fire burned in the hearth, flames that seemed to consume memories more than wood. Valentina stood with her back to him, watching the fire. She wore a dark silk dress that draped around her body with the natural grace of someone born to be feared. When she spoke, her voice was low, steady. Sit down, Ethan. He obeyed without hesitation. There was something in her tone that turned commands into invitations. Do you always live like this? He asked, trying to break the ice. Like what? She said, turning slowly. Her eyes gleamed in the firelight. Giving orders and being obeyed. Valentina smiled. A short, almost sorrowful smile. Power is a cage, Ethan. It only looks beautiful to those on the outside. He said nothing. He just watched her, the way her fingers played with the rim of her wineglass, the way her voice shifted with every word. It was impossible not to see the beauty, but equally impossible to ignore the danger. Did you bring me here to threaten me or to test me? He asked. She moved closer, slow and deliberate. To understand why you're still here. The silence that followed was heavy, almost tangible. He looked at her and saw something he had never noticed before. Vulnerability hidden beneath layers of steel. Valentina looked back, as if fighting an impulse she couldn't name. You made me feel something I wasn't supposed to feel. The words hung between them, caught in the space between the crackling fire and the uneven rhythm of their hearts. "And is that a problem?" he asked, his voice low and rough. "For me it is," she said. "When a woman like me feels, the world pays the price." Ethan stood, close enough to feel the heat of her skin, to breathe in the perfume that carried equal parts strength and danger. "Maybe the world can handle it." Valentina gave a short, almost painful laugh. "You have no idea what you're saying." She stepped back, calm and composed. "You should be afraid of me." "I am. Then why don't you leave?" Ethan took a deep breath. "Because I want to understand what keeps you trapped inside yourself." Valentina watched him for a moment, and for the first time she seemed to have no answer. "No one truly understands what it's like to live between love and duty," she murmured. "You don't live it. You survive it." She walked to the window, gazing at the city below, veiled in mist. "Do you know what it's like to carry an empire on your back?" "No. It's like holding a wounded body. You can feel it bleeding, but you can't let go." The fire cracked, its reflection flickering in her eyes. And in that moment, Ethan realized her strength didn't come from ruling others. It came from never allowing herself to break. "And you, Ethan?" she asked, still facing the window. "Why don't you run?" "Maybe because, for the first time, I don't want to." The words surprised him more than they did her. Valentina turned slowly, her gaze locking with his. "You're a dangerous man. No more than you." She stepped closer until only breath separated them. "If I asked you to leave right now, would you?" "No." Valentina's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Then we're both lost." Silence filled the room again. Not the same silence as before, but one charged, alive, electric. She lifted her glass of wine and extended it toward him. "Drink." Ethan hesitated. "Do you trust me?" she asked, her tone more of a challenge than a question. He took the glass and drank. The taste was rich, sweet and bitter all at once, like her. "Good choice," Valentina said, watching him, "or terrible. Depends on what you expect from me." He set the glass down and stepped closer. "I don't expect anything. I just want to see how far this goes." "This?" she repeated. "This confusion between wanting and fearing." Valentina exhaled softly, surrendering to something she could no longer control. "You're a dangerous distraction, Ethan Ross, and you're the most beautiful mistake I've ever made." For a moment, neither of them moved. The firelight danced in their eyes, as if the entire universe fit inside that silence. Then Valentina reached out and touched his face, gently, uncertainly. "Don't get used to this," she whispered. "Why not? Because everything that starts with me ends in ashes." Then she walked away, leaving the glass on the table and climbing the stairs without looking back. Ethan stayed there motionless, with the taste of wine and doubt lingering on his tongue. He looked around. The mansion's luxury was nothing but disguise. It was a prison, beautiful, golden, and dangerous. And he no longer knew whether he wanted to escape or surrender completely. The rain began before dawn, fine and relentless, running down the mansion windows as if washing away old memories. Ethan woke to the distant rumble of thunder. The place was too quiet. No guards, no footsteps. Only the faint crackle of fire somewhere below. He put on his coat and went downstairs, guided by a feeling he couldn't name. Valentina was in the same room as the night before, now seated at a large table scattered with old folders and yellowed photographs. Her hair was loose, her eyes lost in a time that no longer existed. She didn't notice him enter. She was speaking softly to herself, like someone confessing to the past what she could never say to the present. It all started with loyalty and ended in betrayal. Ethan stood still, just listening. Her hands trembled slightly as she turned the pages of a dossier. In the photos there were stern faces, dark meeting rooms, contracts sealed with blood and power. But one face kept appearing, the same man with cold eyes and a controlled smile. "Marco De Luca," she whispered. "He was my husband's right hand." Valentina lifted her gaze, and for the first time she looked truly exhausted. He's the one who betrayed him. Ethan stepped closer, slowly, respecting the fragile distance between them. Betrayed? Lorenzo believed he could make a deal with the government, clean the family's name. Marco found out, and sold him out. 3 hours later, my husband was dead. The words fell heavy, as if the air itself refused to hold them. Did you kill him? Ethan asked, unsure if he wanted to hear the answer. Valentina smiled, but it was a hollow smile. Not yet. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, running her hands through her hair. I spent 5 years hunting the truth, and when I finally found it, I didn't know what to do with it anymore. Ethan sat across from her. So that's why you live like this, caught between love and hate? No, she said, staring into the fire. I live like this because I learned that love always costs more than crime. Her eyes grew distant for a moment. Power, Ethan, is just another way to survive loss, nothing more. The storm outside grew louder. The firelight flickered in her eyes, as if about to reveal a secret too heavy to speak. And when you met me, did you think I was him? Ethan asked softly. Valentina drew a slow breath. I thought fate was mocking me, reminding me of everything I'd lost. She looked at him, and for a brief second, tenderness broke through the pain. But you're not him, and that's why I fear you. Fear what? He asked. Fear loving again. The confession came dry but honest. Ethan didn't know what to say. The air thickened, and the only sound left was the soft crackle of fire. You still wear his ring, he said, noticing the faint glimmer on her hand. Valentina's eyes fell to it. It once protected me, she murmured. Now, it keeps me captive. She rose and walked toward a dark wooden shelf. From it, she pulled a small box covered in dust. Lorenzo kept everything here. She opened it slowly, revealing an old photograph, she and her husband smiling in a sunlit garden. Ethan realized he had never seen her look so human. That day was the last time the world felt clean, she said quietly. And after that? He asked. After that, the blood never stopped. She closed the box and set it on the table. The man who killed him is still alive, and he works for me. Ethan froze. Marco? Valentina nodded, her expression steady. He thinks I don't know. That money and silence bought my blindness. But I've just been waiting for the right moment. The revelation chilled him, and when that moment comes... Valentina looked at him calmly. Then there'll be nothing left of me to save. The words cut deep. You talk as if you've already decided how it ends. I decided the end the day I lost the beginning. Rain lashed harder against the windows. Valentina moved closer to the glass, staring into the grey horizon. You know, Ethan, love is a luxury people like me can't afford. Everything I touch turns into loss. He stood and joined her by the window. Maybe not this time. You don't understand. Then help me. She met his gaze, the steel in her eyes now trembling. I don't want you to end up like him, Ethan exhaled. Maybe I'm not as fragile as you think. It's not fragility that kills a man. Ethan, it's trust. The silence that followed hurt more than any answer. Valentina turned away, returned to the table, and picked up one of the folders. Everything you need to know is in here. Ethan looked at the envelope she was offering. Why? Because someone will have to tell the truth eventually, and it won't be me. He took the envelope but didn't open it. And what are you going to do now? Wait for destiny to choose the right side this time. He wanted to speak. Anything, but the sound of footsteps in the corridor cut through the moment. 2 men in suits appeared at the door, silent and rigid. Valentina became herself again, the leader, the power, the command. Take him to the guest room, and make sure he stays there. Ethan tried to protest, but her gaze silenced him. As the men escorted him up the stairs, he looked back one last time. Valentina stood motionless by the window, her silhouette framed by the flash of lightning. In the reflection of the glass, the golden ring with the rose gleamed, beautiful and tragic. In that instant, Ethan understood. Her past still ruled her present, and now he was part of the same story. Night fell heavy over Rome. The wind howled from the east, carrying a chill that seemed to seep from the mansion's own walls. Ethan was locked in the guest room, though the prison smelled of velvet and sin. He tried to sleep, but his body refused rest. Valentina's face wouldn't leave his mind, standing still at the window, caught between her empire and the abyss. The door opened without warning. 2 men came in, silent, left a tray of food, and left without a word. Minutes later, another shadow appeared, lighter, feminine. Valentina. She wore a dark robe, her hair loose, bare feet. "Comfortable?" she asked, as if making a polite visit. "Depends on your definition of comfortable." She smiled a tired smile. "No one stays comfortable with me for long." Ethan stood and stepped closer. "So why did you bring me here?" "'Cause I didn't know what to do with what I'm feeling anymore." The sentence slipped out before she could stop it. Her gaze faltered. In that instant, the Iron Woman gave way to someone lost between love and fear. "Sit." He obeyed, but his heart did not. "Marco is getting suspicious," she began. "The council wants proof of my loyalty. And for them, loyalty equals sacrifice." Ethan understood. "They know about me." Valentina nodded, her eyes fixed on the fireplace. "They asked me to prove I am still a Moretti." The silence between them hurt. "And what's the price of this proof?" he asked. She took a deep breath. "You." The words hung in the air, heavy and irreversible. Ethan laughed, a bitter laugh. "So that's it. I'm the test." Valentina moved closer, her voice low. "They want me to eliminate you. Tonight." Time stopped. Looked into her eyes and saw the conflict tearing at whatever humanity remained. "And will you?" She looked away. "I don't know." The fire crackled, throwing shadows against the walls. Valentina seemed to be fighting her own reflection. "Love took everything from me once, Ethan. I won't let it do that again." He approached slowly. "Maybe love didn't take from you. Maybe it tried to save you." She looked at him with a mix of anger and pain. "Don't say that." "Why not?" "Because I want to believe it." Tears came without warning, discreet and stubborn. Valentina turned her face away, but Ethan cupped her chin gently, forcing her to look at him. "You still have a choice." "I have no choice." "You do. You can love without losing power. You can be strong and human at the same time." She shook her head. "That's what men who've never led anything but their own hearts say." For a moment, the silence between them became refuge. She closed her eyes, and he kissed her. The touch was light, held back, but charged with everything that couldn't be said. When their lips parted, the world felt more real and crueler. "That was a mistake," she whispered. "Then make another." Valentina stepped back, breathing in deeply. "If I fall, I'll take you with me. Then fall with me." The clock read 3 a.m. Outside, the distant sound of engines grew nearer. Valentina looked toward the window, her expression hardening again. "They're coming!" "Who?" "The council! Marco!" Ethan tried to think fast, but she was already moving. "You'll leave through the back. Take the side corridor, the car will be waiting." "And you?" "I stay." He grabbed her arm. "They'll kill you. Only if I let them." Valentina pulled free, but before turning away, she placed a hand on his face. Gentle, final. "Between love and power, there's always blood." The words came out like a vow. Ethan tried to speak, but she pushed him toward the door. "Go, now." His footsteps echoed through the corridors as men in black stormed the mansion's main entrance. Valentina descended the stairs as if walking toward her own judgment. The grand hall filled with voices, and Marco stood at the front. "Good evening, Signora Moretti." His tone dripped with poison. "Good evening, Marco. I heard you had company." "Not anymore," he smirked. "Then prove it." Valentina didn't move. Her stare was cold, precise. "Do you really think I'd bring a stranger into my house without knowing exactly what to do with him?" Marco stepped closer, suspicion tightening his features. "Then where is he?" She leaned forward, her lips near his ear. where no traitor will ever find him. Marco froze, his expression hardening. You know, I always knew. He raised his gun, but before he could pull the trigger, two of her men entered the hall, their weapons aimed at him. The air thickened, tension hanging like smoke. Valentina walked slowly toward Marco and whispered, "Loyalty, Marco, is for those who still have a soul. You sold yours 5 years ago." A single gunshot tore through the silence. Marco fell, the gun still in his hand. His body hit the floor slowly, as if time itself hesitated to let him fall. Valentina exhaled, calm, expressionless. The woman who had wept minutes earlier was iron once more. Blood spread across the marble, and she stood still, staring at the consequence of her choice. Upstairs, Ethan heard the shot and understood. He looked down the corridor, torn between running and staying. But the scent of gunpowder and the relentless rain pulled him back. Below, Valentina wiped her hands clean, her eyes empty. She knew that by saving the man who reminded her of her past, she had condemned her own future. She climbed the stairs slowly, each step echoing like a farewell. When she reached the door, Ethan was waiting, eyes wet, voice trembling. "What did you do?" "What I had to. And now nothing goes back to the way it was." She stepped into his arms, shaking. "Love made me weak. But for you, I'll allow myself to be weak again." Ethan held her tightly, feeling her heart race out of rhythm. Outside, the storm raged as if the heavens mourned their choice. And in that chaos he understood. Valentina's love was a sentence, but it was the most beautiful kind of punishment. Dawn came slowly, dragging a pale light across the cold marble floors. The distant sound of helicopter blades sliced through the air, breaking the silence that followed the storm. Ethan stood by the window, his gaze lost in the mist-covered hills. The scent of smoke and gunpowder still lingered, the scent of an ending. Behind him, soft footsteps approached. Valentina appeared at the doorway, hair loose, face bare, wrapped in a black coat that seemed to carry the weight of her past. "The helicopter's ready," she said flatly. Ethan turned to her. "And you?" She lowered her gaze. "I stay." He took a step forward. "They'll come for you. Let them," she said quietly. "It's time I stopped running." She walked to the center of the hall, where Marco's blood still stained the marble. A tragic signature that refused to fade. "For a long time I thought love was weakness," she began, her voice hoarse and tired. "But love is the only power that can't be bought or negotiated. And that's why I never learned how to use it." Ethan stepped closer. "Then come with me. Let's get out of here." Valentina lifted her gaze, her eyes shining between tears and pride. "Ethan, I was born in a world where love is a sentence and redemption is a luxury no one pays for twice. If I leave now, whatever's left of my soul will disappear." He took her hands. "You can start over." She smiled, soft, brief, and heartbreakingly sad. Some of us weren't born to start over, only to close the circle. The wind slipped through the open window, carrying the distant sound of helicopter blades drawing near. Valentina removed the ring, the one with the rose wrapped in thorns, and placed it in his palm. "Keep it. To remember that even the most beautiful flowers know how to wound." Ethan closed his hand around it, feeling the weight of gold and meaning. "And what do I do with it?" "Survive." She walked toward the staircase and stopped at the top, looking out at the grey sky. The thrum of the helicopter grew louder, mixing with the pounding of his heart. "Valentina." She turned her head slightly. "Yes, why me?" She drew in a deep breath. "Because you looked at me like I could still be saved." He wanted to run to her, but her gaze held him still. It was a look of farewell, steady yet broken. "Go, Ethan, before I change my mind." He hesitated, eyes wet. "If I go, I promise I'll come back." "Don't promise what fate won't keep." Ethan took a few steps backward, unable to look away. The wind lifted her hair, and for a heartbeat, Valentina seemed part of the storm itself, made of strength, guilt, and beauty. He turned and walked down the corridor one last time. Each step felt like leaving pieces of himself behind. The helicopter waited on the terrace, the pilot silent, the engine humming low. Ethan looked back. Valentina stood on the balcony, watching from afar. For an instant, time stopped. He lifted his gaze toward her, and she raised her hand as if saying goodbye to everything she'd ever been. The blades spun faster, whipping up leaves and dust. Ethan climbed aboard, the ring still clenched in his fist. The helicopter rose slowly, and the mansion grew smaller, swallowed by the hills. From above, he saw her figure, alone, motionless, a shadow against the breaking dawn. The sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of red. And there, between the roar of the blades and the birth of light, Ethan understood. Some stories don't need happy endings, only true ones. The radio hissed softly. A message came through without a sender. The voice was hers. Never send a message to the wrong woman, Ethan. Some of them know how to find you. He smiled, eyes glistening. And as Rome disappeared beneath the clouds, the wind carried away the last trace of her, the woman the world had feared. Finally undone by something even power couldn't conquer. Love. Some stories don't. End, they simply fall silent once the heart has understood. Ethan left carrying the quiet she'd left behind, and Valentina remained with the weight of a love that could never be. Fate had torn them apart, but time, stubborn and merciful, kept the memory alive. Because some loves don't ask for continuity. They ask for eternity. If this story moved you, subscribe and turn on notifications. There are many more forbidden loves waiting to be told.